Upon acceptance, buyer has right to assign property and be released from their rights, obligations, and liabilities to the contract, or of the contract, excuse me. Number 5 is only to be utilized whenever you're working with a realtor. Now, let me paint a scenario for you. Let's say that you're driving down the street and you see a sign that says for sale, and it's got a realtor's name on it. Maybe they're from Remax, maybe they're from Coldwell Banker, Keller Williams, whatever. Well, you just happen to pull over, walk up to the door, knock on the door, speak to the seller of the property. They tell you the situation. They seem motivated to you, and they do have it listed with an agent. Well, being an investor, a savvy investor, a strategic investor, and one that can apply the investor's formula within a few seconds, then you come to the derivation that this could be a potential deal. You want to get it on contract as quickly as possible. So rather than going back through the realtor, what you do is you present this offer to the seller, and note to the fact that you're going to still take all the clauses from this contract, move it over onto the standard purchase and sale agreement that will make the realtor comfortable. Yet in the meantime, you don't want anybody else moving forward and putting this on contract so that it can actually, basically what you're doing here is securing a competitive advantage. So this is the only time that you would use clause number 5. Number 6, buyer and seller to pay normal closing costs, subject to walkthrough of buyer, buyer's partners and or assigns or potential lessees, seller to provide buyer with access to property upon acceptance. Well, what this is basically stating is that prior to you closing on the property, from the date that you guys have actually signed on the contract and entered into a contract, you just want to ensure that you have the opportunity to inspect the property. There's no new holes or damage that's been caused by the seller after your home inspection, as well as you may be having your partner go through there, or if you're looking to rent the property out in advance to your closing, if this is a cash flow property, you now have that opportunity in the contract and stated up front. And obviously, sellers to provide the buyer with access to the property upon acceptance. Number 7, it truly isn't a clause. It's basically standard contractual procedure, but we put this under conditions. The closing shall occur on or before. You're going to state the month, the day, and the year. Now, typically, if it's a motivated seller, they want to close as quickly as possible, 30, 45 days. From an investment standpoint, the longer, the better. If you could make it 60 days or 90 days, that's great. And your diligence period's 14 days, that's wonderful. Unless, from a strategic perspective and it's in your plan, you need to close on this property quickly because you've got tenants that want to go in there and rent it, or you have another buyer that you're going to turn around and sell it to quickly, perhaps as a double closing scenario. Number 8 is another condition that's typical of all real estate contracts. This offer shall remain open until blank o'clock Eastern Standard Time if you're in North America, and if not accepted by said time, this offer shall be deemed rescinded and deposits shall be refunded. Well, essentially in number 8, you're basically trying to create a little bit of a sense of urgency. 24 hours, 12 to 24 hours is typical for the seller to make up their mind if they're going to accept the contract or not. Therefore, if it goes beyond that time and they haven't signed the contract and given you a copy back, then you are no longer committed to entering forward in that contract. But even if they do, you still have those exit clauses and those diligence periods built into it. Number 9, buyer and seller agree and acknowledge that facsimile signatures are acceptable and legal and binding. Now, in this day and age, we're moving toward the internet, and a lot of transactions are getting done over the internet and scanning faxes, whatnot. Well, from a legal perspective, typically what attorneys require are original signatures to be considered legal and binding, unless you have this condition in there that if you send them back and forth via fax, that's legal and binding. As long as it's written into the contract, you're good as gold. That's a condition that I wouldn't really take as a clause to move or remove. As a matter of fact, from number 6 to number 9, I would always ensure in there, and I probably actually wouldn't number, but I kept the numbers